ugly Americans.
Hi, this is CJ Holmes, founder of Homeowners for Justice, your host today on Weekdays Live. And boy, do we have a show today. It's amazing how it comes together about an hour before the show. People are sending me links. We're talking about this, that, and the other. And I just really have a whole lot of stuff I want to share today. What's really fabulous is that people are rising. They are rising, and we are gaining ground. We just have to keep believing that God is on our side. We will win. May the force be with us. So, yesterday and Friday, I showed lots of videos, and I want you to understand that I don't necessarily agree with everything I show, and I'm not selling those solutions. I'm showing information so that all of us can wake up and start to listen to what people are saying. Stop thinking about the labels. Oh, this came from somebody I don't like, so I'm not going to pay any attention to it. Stop that. Any kind of labeling that we fall into that restricts our minds so that we don't even listen to what's being said, we must stop this. We have been brainwashed in this country to think in terms of right and left and Democrat and Republican, and neither side wants to listen to each other. And they're all making statements, and most of them are partially true, but partially maybe false. So what I'm trying to do is to show out into the stream of consciousness into this country what is happening, what is being said, what is being done, so that all of us can give feedback and start thinking and start analyzing. Okay, do we agree with that? We agree with that. We didn't agree with this. So I challenge you, please, whenever I show or say or do anything that you don't like, you disagree with, you have facts that make, that challenge what is being said, please send them to me. I will do my best to keep track of those and try to show them on the next shows. And if you want to get on the show and talk about it, please let me know. We're always looking for good live guests. However, I have to admit, right now I'm really focused on recorded docs, analyzing the recorded docs, and I want to just share something real quickly with you about that today when we get down to it. More fraud in the docs. Nevertheless, what I want to do right now is to share a link that somebody sent me, because Bloomberg, had this horrific new post on their magazine. And here's the link if you want to protest Bloomberg. And I absolutely agree. Let's protest. The best thing we can do is to get online with each of these articles and start writing comments, because people read those comments. And as they read those comments, stick in the link to Homeowners for Justice, stick in a link to your website, stick in links, because other people that read them will follow them. This is how we can start to build our network and our connections, a web, what a concept, around the country. So here's the link. Contact us, they say. Go for it. I want to bring out, and I'm going to try to rip through these real quickly because we've got an awful lot on our plate. Wall Street on parade. And I want to mention that, again, what I've said to others is that pretty much everything I say or do, half the people aren't going to like it in the country. So if I say Occupy, half the people go, oh, we don't want to do with Occupy. If I say, Tea Party, the other half of the people go, we don't want to think about that. That's the problem. You're making labels. You got to stop the labeling. Stop it. Because by labeling, they divide us. They pit us against each other. And we, the rats on the sinking ship, have to say, something, we're going to stop thinking about labels. I don't even care what the label is. It's immaterial. What are they saying and what are they doing? So even if you thought Occupy is all these people breaking into houses, and truly it is not. I've met thousands of Occupy people that are so dedicated to fighting foreclosure. So here's what Occupy is doing. The movement is now filing lawsuits against every federal regulator of Wall Street. Hallelujah. I just want to read a quick comment on this, a paragraph, and then we'll move on. It said, these are the ones that they're filing against. right here. The organization is suing every federal regulator that resides in the pocket of Wall Street, which means they are suing every federal regulator of Wall Street. And spunky group that they are, they're naming individuals. Here's the rundown. Ben Bernanke, Chairman of the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System. Martin Gruenberg, Chairman of the FDIC. Elise Walter, Chair of the SEC. Boy, there's an agency asleep on the job. In the pockets. They're not asleep. They know what they're doing. They're just in the pockets, and they're thinking about their jobs down the road. This is the point. Moving back, Gary Gensler, Chair of the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. Thomas Curry, Comptroller of the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency. Let's sue him. The OCC is, we file complaints, and that's giving us a postponement, but they are not insisting that the banks and the servicers do what they said they would do with the cease and desist order from 2011. We know they're still getting away with it, the servicers. Mary Miller, Undersecretary for Domestic Finance of the Treasury. Neil Wolin, Acting Secretary of the Treasury. The SEC is serving a valiant public Occupy the SEC, is serving a valiant public service in bringing this lawsuit. No kidding. Let us support them. Occupy eventually, I swear, will turn into a good word that millions and millions of owners will accept. Many, many, many of them have bought into the media presentation that Occupy people are just scumbags. And that is not true. But when the media is against you, it's very difficult to get some real truth out there. I want to bring to your attention another comment. This is from Clouded Titles, the author of the agency that did the investigation in Texas on the audit investigation for that county. And this is an article talking about the Pennsylvania lawsuit by the recorder. One of the recorders, Nancy Becker, in Pennsylvania, filed a lawsuit I think in 2011. Yes, November 7, 2011. And so this is the trouble, part of the trouble with lawsuits. They take a long time to come around. And so here we are. I just want to read this paragraph. You can go ahead and read the rest of the article yourself. This is the summary. In a 35-page memorandum and order, U.S. District Court Judge James Curtis Joyner dismissed Montgomery County Recorder of Deeds Nancy Becker's claim for civil conspiracy, but left intact her claims as part of a putative class action on behalf of all other recorders in Pennsylvania. And these claims could force MERS and its member subscribers to record every single missing document to every single MERS mortgage to perfect each property owner's chain of title and pay the appropriate fees due at the time of recording. What a concept. And so, as we discuss, we're going to talk about later in the show, the Servicers Boot Camp. I've been sent their training, their internal training on how they're fighting back against these lawsuits. And what's really fascinating to me, they don't discuss this one. They're hiding this under the rug. They don't want to talk about this. And this class action that this recorder is filing could be a boilerplate for all the recorders in all the states, or their attorney general to file on behalf of the recorders in all the states for the recording fees plus all the documentation. Because that is the point. They have literally ruined the recording documents in all of the registries and recorders' offices around the country. So this is something to really keep a good eye on, where the people might be winning. That is really exciting. Now, the people are rising. I'm going to play 2 short snips out of this, but this is Fresno TV. People are starting to say, you know something? Just like me. The media is never going to give me any notice, so let's live stream. Let's reach out to the people, and let's be able to have people watch on internet TV. The internet TV concept is just broad. The people can rise up, and we need to rise up and take the internet airwaves to ourselves. So just a couple of quick snips on this.
Hi, this is Steve, And this is We Are Change Fresno TV. And tonight we are broadcasting to you from CMAC in Fresno, California. And tonight we have a power-packed show full of all kinds of information and truth that the mainstream media will not give you.
And here is just a snip of someone sharing, Brooke sharing the foreclosure issue that she and her mom have been facing. And I just want to make a notice here because others have listened to the entire presentation. And this is pretty typical. Most people cannot, the subject is complicated, and they cannot express it completely accurately. They gather the gist of the arguments, they understand the basics, but they may make misstatements when it comes to making statements that are typically general. So we recommend, it was just shared with me this morning, like 5 minutes before the show, and I said, okay, I'll say this. And that is, I really recommend that everybody, and I say this myself on every of the workshops, I am not an attorney, I'm not a CPA, I'm not a loan modification specialist, I'm not a securitization auditor. Please understand that you have to take this with the spirit in which it's given, and there may be things that change, there may be things that won't work for you. You know, the people, when we're sharing, if you're gonna be sharing, people are gonna be asking you, you may be on TV or a radio show, please just say, you know, this is the best of my understanding, I'm trying to explain it as best I understand it, and I may not say everything accurately. Just as simple as that. That just lets people understand that no, you're not the expert. Everything you say may not be accurate or true, and things may change down the road as you share. So to make what you said yesterday not true today, we're in a flux, a situation of flux, and it's a complicated issue. Just a word to the wise. All right, let's listen to this just briefly.
To auction. And in all of these cases, the notary and the supposed vice president of whatever bank that is signing these documents to take people's homes they're not valid. There are
Wow.
people that aren't the vice president of that bank. They're not the vice president of any bank. They're just have an easy name to sign, pretty much.
Wow, so that is incredible. I mean, so we have people that are signing these, what is it called again? The
substitution of trustee.
Substitution of trustee, and these people are not even employed. They're not the vice president of the bank,
right?
That holds the title or the deed, right? The deed, and so that is incredible. Oh my God!
That they thought that they could get away with that is incredible, and that they still are is what's even more incredible. That the courts aren't recognizing this. It's like the big elephant in the room that everybody's ignoring, and.
Yes and no. And so you understand what I'm saying. The fact is, she's getting interviewed. It's getting out there. And that's one of the most positive things about this sharing of the public with the public, what's going on in your life and what you understand is happening. And then recommend that people go to a workshop or a training where they can actually understand. The fact is, most of these documents are forged, are fake in specific ways. And perhaps that person is, by corporate resolution, some kind of VP of the bank. But the issues are that there is so much forgery and fake titles and that kind of thing, which is what I've been, doing workshops on, that in general what she's saying is accurate. And it gets the message out that they're using forged and fraudulent documents, even though that what she says may not be completely exactly accurate on every document. The point is that they're still getting away with it. And until we can get our forged documents out in mass, that's still my push. And the trouble is, I keep saying I'm going to get the owner's statement ready, except I keep finding more stuff wrong. So I keep having to go back and add this, add that, and it keeps pushing out the time that I can bring this to the public. Nevertheless, this is the point, and this is public TV, and people are going to start watching this, and the news is going to spread. So again, on each one of these places that have these kinds of information, these channels, YouTube channels, please, everybody, sign in for a comment. I tried to put a comment on there, and for some reason it wouldn't let me, and I don't know why. I haven't had a chance to figure it out. So try to leave comments everywhere. The more that we can do, this is armchair activism. Right now, we can be active on the internet, sitting in our chairs and our computers. So that's something that I highly recommend we all do. Quick now, I want to do an update on the market. It is truly shocking what is going on in real estate. And so just as a quick, brief thing, this is an email that I get in my email, emails like this. They are giving stated loans. Stated loans are back. Now, these are not your mega banks. These are going to be private entities, but they're giving cash out refis. Does that sound familiar? Does that sort of make loan officers, that people that used to do mortgages, shake in your boots? Because this was the start of the subprime mortgage crisis. However, on the one hand, the fact of the matter is, if the person is qualified for the payments, and these are not exploding loans, it allows people to purchase homes. And you have to remember that most home prices around the country, almost everywhere, are significantly below the boom prices in 2005, 2006. In some cases, they're like 25% of what the high balloon price was. So when you look at it in prices, home prices are more realistic. But here we go again. They're coming out with 4.99% stated income. They typically will not do as high a leverage. LTV is loan to value, so they're only 50 to 70% of loan to value. So that means you have to put a lot of cash into it. And I'm confident that these investors putting this money into these loans as lenders through these companies, I'm sure it's a hard money loan company. The issue is they feel pretty confident that prices won't be collapsing anymore, and so there will always be equity in the property, and that is what's fueling this. But that's fueling it, and there's more and more people that cannot get a normal loan, so they're going to these kinds of sources to borrow so that they can actually buy something. The other thing I wanted to point out with the market issue, this is from Bank of America. And as you probably understand, many agents do short sales. People either lost income, just can't get the loan modification, whatever. They decide instead of going through a foreclosure, they're going to try to do a short sale process. And typically in the short sale process, owners will get some kind of a move-out monies, if you will, sort of a cash for keys kind of program. They call it something else, but it doesn't matter. They get some money to move out. And so then they know when they're supposed to move out. It's a more what I would call elegant solution than somebody just knocking on the door and saying, 3 days, get out. And most people dread that. So what this is talking about, and I want to point out, is that from Bank of America, this is an update on the B of A cooperative short sale policy. B of A has been cooperating with not foreclosing, not dual tracking short sales. In other words, when the short sale starts, they've been postponing auctions. But right here, as of January 15, 2013, there will no longer be a temporary foreclosure hold during the cooperative short sale property marketing phase. In other words, you're on your own, guys. You're going to list that for short sale. We're going to try to foreclose as fast as possible. So just word to the wise. Here's warning. It's now a race. B of A is racing to take these properties back as fast as possible. And if you've been watching or listening, we already know it's because they make way more money foreclosing than doing any kind of a loan mod or short sale. It's all about the servicer's bottom line. Trust me. They don't care that they're throwing out 90-year-old people. They don't care that it was a toxic loan. They don't care about anything but profits and their pockets. And that's what's also so ethically, morally outrageous and enraging the owners and the activists and the people that actually have this happen to them. This is just, it's truly outrageous and is not what we grew up thinking that America was. Now, want to move back into what we're talking about here. More fraud on the docks. Real quickly, I wanted to point out something that just came to mind, and this is one thing that keeps pushing off the owner statement of suspicious documents, and that is on one of the documents. It happens to be on the sample that we've used for the workshops. And as I've said, you got to read every word, because the more words you read, the more fraud you find. And so on this case, this is on the notice of default, and on notice of defaults in California and deeds of trust states, they do not have to be notarized. So just anybody can sign them virtually. And as you look at the title of the signer in this case, Recon Trust Company was already the trustee. They're already the trustee. So my question to Linda was, how come they're signing as agent for the beneficiary? What is going on? Why would they do that? She thinks it's just an assembly line, just a production line. Doesn't matter, just stamp it out. But here you go. Is Recon Trust Company NA, which is a bank, national bank, actually an agent for the beneficiary? So she said, well, who's the beneficiary on this notice of default? So you go back into like page 2, and here it is. The beneficiary in this case is a fake beneficiary. Cannot be the beneficiary. We already know that because it's the trustee of a mortgage-backed security. So the agency is a fiduciary relationship that arises when one person, a principal, this would be Recon Trust, manifests assent to another the principal would be U.S. National Association as trustee for CSMC mortgages. The trustee would be the principal. Recon Trust would be the agent, and that agent shall act on the principal's behalf. So the big question is, could Recon Trust Company NA be an agent for this trustee? It's in a sense moot on this particular issue, because we already know that the trustee cannot be the beneficiary. So the whole document is fraudulent from the beginning. It's a void notice of default. The trouble is, as if you watch all the people claiming about their foreclosures, the documents can be completely false and fake, every last one of them, and they're used to take the house. They're still foreclosing, and this is the outrage that we have to fight. Now, one thing I wanted to talk about specifically is the servicer defensive litigation. This is really fascinating. It's a packet of how servicers can fight back, and it's a summary that servicers are being given about litigation and how they're standing in various states. This is truly an interesting article, and I want to show you where I've got it on my website. I've linked it. If you go to my website under fraud and corruption and go to the MERS mess, it's on the MERS page, and it's right here, servicers fighting back. Never underestimate the resistance. They are making so much money with this, and if the people start to really encroach on this, it will bring the banks down. And they understand this. This is really sort of the heart and soul of the fight. So they're going to fight really, really hard, and we must never underestimate them. So here's the insider information on the kicking the boot camps, gaining an edge in default servicing defensive litigation. Okay, this is a presentation to servicers. Look who did it. It's by the Mortgage Bankers Association, and it was done in their servicing conference and expo last year. So we're playing catch up, but this is what they were talking about. Oh, and that's probably why they didn't have Pennsylvania in, because Pennsylvania's ruling just came down later in the year after this conference. Interesting to see what their new conference presentation will be this year. Maybe they just had it if it's annual. So they're talking about foreclosure boot camps are everywhere, and they're showing the people. They're showing the bankers, the servicers, what we're doing, how we're trying to fight back. And so this is what they're talking about. They're talking about attorneys that are willing to help owners, and how they're what the attorneys are doing. The smart ones, they call them fly-specking procedures and documents. They're looking for things to make the foreclosure illegal. Here's the people that are making the presentation so that now everybody can pull this up on my website. If you want to know who these people are, there they are. They're the ones, these are the attorneys on the side of the banks. These are the ones that are doing this presentation and that the servicers are looking to for help against the people. So here's one of the key things they start right in at the pooling and servicing agreement violation. They're talking about the defenses and the pooling and servicing agreement violations defense, and they call this a new take on standing. So this is now, let's keep our hats on, this is the bankers, this is how they're looking, they're fighting against us, they're saying, okay, these owners, they're going to try to get standing with the PSA agreements. And so, and in a nutshell, the claimed defense is that the securitized trust cannot prove that the mortgage loan went into the pool according to the terms of the agreement, and therefore, because of these violations, has no standing to foreclose. And where is the defense being used? They talk about it in the challenge to proof of claims in Chapter 13 bankruptcies. Debtor counsels are using the defense to justify extensive discovery and depositions of parties, signing assignments and note endorsements. Yeah, they are. And the use of the defense has been dragging out the foreclosure process. This is a good summary of what the people have been trying to do. So what can a servicer do to combat this? Well, here's an idea. You could actually have the original note and endorsement allonges available for counsel. Okay, they don't discuss what the servicer is supposed to do if they don't have that stuff. And that's the key. Remember I showed a couple of weeks ago the price list of generation of these documents. You know, lender processing services charges, I think, $35 to generate an allonge. So this is an interesting issue that catches me as I just look at this. So they're telling, you know, what courts across the country have held rather consistently that the PSA does not trump the Uniform Commercial Code. They cite some law. They're talking about UCC 3. We already know that that's on tangible instruments. Thank you, James and crew and Alvy. And so it's actually, you know, they don't understand either. They're not bothering the fact that they've actually pulled the note payments out and turned it into intangible property. And so they're just presenting to the servicers what they understand, which tells me that in our defense, by doing the tangible intangible issue, we could have more clout potentially in courts. So there's move to strike defenses. Borrowers lack standing to challenge the PSA because they're not parties to it. They cite some more lawsuits. They talk about PSAs are subject to New York law by contract, but it does not support the defense that the trustee is acting contrary to the PSA, as business trusts are exempt from trustee statutes, most often cited by debtors' counsel. And I'm thinking that the debtors' counsel are cited, perhaps obviously, that tells us debtor counsel, come on attorneys, cite better statutes because they're not citing the correct ones. And so New York estate powers and trust law explicitly excludes business trusts. A lot of this stuff, I don't know, I'm not an attorney, I don't understand, but I'm telling you, people watching this do understand it, and people watching this do understand that others that they know will understand it. So forward that link to them right now. That remix are business trusts under the IRS code. If the court orders discovery, what should the servicer produce? Well, so get a link. We just talked about yesterday how most of the PSAs are online with the SEC, and we just found one yesterday in the workshop. And so obviously the servicers could do that because they do know in MERS which trust it's supposed to be in. Get the mortgage loan schedules, show the loan went into the trust at the time of securitization, but be sure to redact borrower's personal information. Okay, so here's my question. They're telling the servicers to show the loan went into the trust But how do they do that if it didn't? So they may need an affidavit from the document custodian or trustee. So this tells me that the servicers are hearing this thinking, okay, I have to forge one of those documents. That's a document I need to forge quick. Now it's specifically about MERS. This is an update, and this is now from February last year. They talk about the class action in Arizona, what the plaintiffs, that's the debtors, the owners, are claiming, that MERS loans are wrongful, and that lenders and everybody used MERS to commit fraud. They're saying in response that MERS, this is what the debtors are saying, MERS is not a beneficiary, it's a sham, and the use of MERS promotes and facilitates predatory lending. You and I would probably agree with all of these. They're just summarizing what we're saying, and that the MERS system impermissibly splits the note and the deed of trust by facilitating the transfer of the ownership of the note among lenders, while MERS holds onto the deed of trust. Now, actually, what we've discovered and what James and Alvy have shared with us, and Joe, and that is that no, it doesn't put the note into the mortgage-backed security. It takes the payment stream, turns it intangible into the mortgage-backed security. So here's something that we can potentially use, because the note and deed of trust aren't really split. It's the note and deed of trust are split from the payments, converting it into intangible property. That could be something, and I'm positive that's what attorneys and all of us are trying to work on fast, is to come up with better arguments that really cannot be ruled against. And so in this particular case, they're talking about Cervantes Court, the lawsuit, the resolution. The judge said that there were no false representations, no reliance on representations, no damages, and they affirmed the district court's dismissal without leave. And so Cervantes Court found no wrongful foreclosure. And here's their arguments back. Even if MERS was sham beneficiary, the actual lenders would be entitled to repayment of the loans. And proper parties would initiate foreclosure after default. And splitting of the note and deed of trust would only be an issue if MERS was not an agent of the lenders. So here we have other words being used. And those agent of the lenders has to have some kind of a corporate resolution, which doesn't have to be recorded anywhere. The only way we can get this information when they use the word agent is under discovery. They're not going to give you these documents without that. Here's a multi-district litigation concerning formation or operation of MERS. And so at this time last year, there were 6 class actions, 4 in Nevada, 1 in California, 1 in Arizona, and 70+ tag-along cases. That's the Pennsylvania, because it was filed in 2011. So it's one of the 70+ tag-along cases that they haven't talked about here. But yes, all of these potentially represent millions of borrowers. They have the same judge as in the Cervantes case ruling. This is one of the reasons, I'm sure, that owners, debtors, the people, feel like they're not getting justice. You get a judge that's already made these rulings, already on the side of the banks. You know, are they really open to looking at new arguments in a fair and open manner? Hard to say. So the multi-district litigation claim that they MERS formed a conspiracy to commit fraud, the security instruments are unenforceable, foreclosures are wrongful on MERS loans. They're seeking this kind of damages, attorney fees, rescission of the foreclosure, restitution, TROs, temporary restraining orders, permanent injunctions, prohibiting the sale, eviction, collection, or transfer of interest, which means the owners get to live there. Other relief, and quiet title as to certain Arizona properties. And we already talked about the Pennsylvania action is basically a quiet title action. So the plaintiff's main theories were that to foreclose you need to be a beneficiary. MERS is not a real beneficiary. You need a valid deed of trust. The MERS deeds of trust are not valid because they're split from the note. If MERS is just an agent of the beneficiary, its attempted assignment of the deed of trust is ineffective because only a true beneficiary can make such an assignment. The ruling, citing Cervantes, the multi-district court ruled that litigation court ruled that plaintiffs failed to allege the deficiencies. They provide no legal authority supporting the theory that the use of MERS destroys the security. MERS, as agent of the beneficiary, has the power to assign and foreclose, and plaintiffs agreed to that power when they executed deeds of trust. Of course, the plaintiffs have filed an appeal, and I don't know where this is at yet. I'm only just going through this overview that they've given that I got a hold of. But I do know that many, many cases are being overturned on appeal. The owners are losing in initial court. On appeal, they're being overturned. So that would be very interesting to see. So here's another win for them in Arizona, and this is Vasquez v. Saxon Mortgage. And the this is a Supreme Court, certified 2 questions from the bankruptcy court. Is the recording of an assignment of deed of trust required prior to the filing of a notice of trustee's sale? And must the beneficiary of a deed of trust being foreclosed have the right to enforce the secured obligation? And so the decision was a win for the banks, the servicers. Now, they start going down state by state. Notice, this is in Oregon. Problems in Oregon. Uh-oh. Oregon's tough. So during the course of a wrongful foreclosure, the court asked the defendants for a complete chain of loan ownership. And they produced the milestone report. And under the Oregon Trust Deed Act, in order to foreclose, the trust deed and all beneficial assignments of the trust deed must be recorded. In other words, it has to be tangible law. And so they're having troubles in Oregon, as we already knew. Lucky for the owners. Here we go into what the court decided. The court determined that MERS is not the person for whose benefit a trust deed is given. The case is on appeal. We've heard I think that was the appeal that we had live streamed a couple of months ago. I'm not sure about the ruling on that. We need to find out. Here they're talking about Washington. District Court stayed its cases involving MERS pending decision by Washington Supreme Court. And here's the questions. And so, does a homeowner have a cause of action under Washington's Consumer Protection Act against MERS if MERS acts an unlawful beneficiary under the terms of the Washington Deed of Trust Act? And so, oral argument was set for last year. I believe that they ruled against MERS. They've definitely ruled against Recon Trust and other foreclosure trust emails. Here's Nevada, an update on Nevada. This is the AB 284. This was the amendment to the statute that says all assignments of the beneficial interest must be recorded in order to be effective. And so these are issues from last year. Anyone watching, and I would really appreciate anyone and everyone giving me updates on each of these states. Do the research, let us know, I'll live stream it. I just don't have time to do all that research myself. Now, you'll love this. Both MERS and the weather are great in California. Ain't it great? So, California is really under pressure. Like I've said before, when these other states blockade the MERS and the foreclosures, we're easy pickings. And it's just like when you lock up you put a burglar alarm on your house. The burglar sees a sign and says, I'll go pick on one that doesn't have one. And so we're getting picked on, California. Wake up. And they start citing cases that they have won. And so, in other words, they don't even have to come out and say it. The servicers are thinking, they're thinking, oh, this is foreclosed in California. We'll just snatch all those houses. Why do you think B of A is not going to stop or is going to start dual tracking on short sales? They're not going to stop foreclosure on a short sale. They're going to dual track. They're going to take the houses as fast as possible before we change our laws. You mark my words. Now, they want to talk about a federal solution. This is what's going on. This was a year ago. So in 2011, a senator introduced the Residential Mortgage Market Privatization and Standardization Act, proposed to privatize Fannie and Freddie, standardize PSAs and loss mitigation program, and turn MERS into a GSE, government regulated by the FHFA. Okay, so if anybody can give us an update on what's going on in the federal sector and lawsuits, bills, litigation, and rights for the owners, please help me out. So they want to talk now about HAMP and other litigation. These are loan modifications. I never promised you a rose garden. You just got to see. And here they have. They're showing the servicers what their actions are doing as they're trying to ride on a bicycle with a square, as the people, are losing their homes. Here is what I wanted to really point out. Enacted in February 2009, they talked about the TARP for private loans. They talked about HAMP, extended until December 31st, 2013. Less than half the borrowers who applied had mortgages permanently lowered, and the majority have dropped out altogether. Look at this. Look at this. Here's defending HAMP claims. Borrowers are only entitled to review, not an actual modification. There you go. We don't really want to modify. We just want to foreclose. And all of the laws, all of the programs coming out of the federal government have no teeth. We've talked about this for a year and a half. The servicers get paid, $1,000 to review the loan mod. And then when they start the review, they deny. Then they start the review again, or you apply again, they get another grant. So they're only doing the minimum to get paid. They don't really care at all about you. And virtually everybody, I must say this again, don't believe what any loan servicer tells you over the phone. Insist everything be in writing. They lie, 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 lie. Okay, here's the 10 kick-ass commandments, and I'll stop with that. Basically, it's thou shalt learn to love swimming in the swim lanes. Process flow shall be my new best friend. Thou shalt have personal knowledge when executing documents or giving testimony. In other words, you're going to lie better. Lie better. Because I'm telling you, as I've already shown in my workshops, at least half of these foreclosures that I'm working on to submit to the Attorney General for a statewide grand jury, they have documents that were filed in 2012, after the consent judgments from the federal court. So it doesn't matter. They're telling the servicers to do this. The servicers aren't going to do it. You kidding? And they're only going to be thinking, okay, I have to forge that document. Okay, I need to forge that. I need to lie better over here. Honor the chain of title, including all assignments and allonges. Of course, they don't have the assignments and allonges. They have to create those when they foreclose. So the whole thing, I actually start to think when I'm talking through this out loud to you, and when I looked at it, it's like, okay, the Mortgage Bankers Association and those attorneys are trying to wipe their hands and saying, okay, we told them, you can't come after me. We told them they were supposed to do all these things, because as you and I know, as owners, fighting the fight and proving the fraud, that at some point we just continue to believe that this is going to explode. And when that bubble pops, when we actually break through the media black hole and they actually have stacks and stacks and stacks of owner statements of suspicious documents, every last one of them filled with fraud and fake documents used to foreclose on that house, it's that explosion is going to land on people. And I think that, Mortgage Bankers Association, these attorneys, the advisors, the people that are doing work for them are going to, the foreclosure brokers, the ones listing foreclosures, they're all going to try to back off real quick and say, whoa, not me, not me. It was them over there. And we can only hope that that's what we could get. So with that, I need to stop and get busy working on these fraud documents, because that's a huge challenge, and it's taken a lot more time than I thought. But I just wanted to share these things with you real quickly today. to give you more encouragement. Keep up the fight, keep up the battle. Please send me the information, any updates about the especially legal action, what is going on in the states. Oh yes, and here's a question. Somebody asked a question about Virginia. Virginia, in December, there's some lady out there that has been looking at Recon Trust's website, foreclosure website. And she said in December they had 276 properties identified for foreclosure. She gets on their website in Virginia. Right now there's one. So she's asking me, so what's going on in Virginia? I'm going, I don't know what's going on in Virginia. So the call goes out. Here's a question, guys. What's going on in Virginia? I can think of a whole lot of things, but I'm just speculating. Let's find out what's going on in Virginia. Did they pass a law? Did they shut down Recon Trust? Is there some kind of lawsuit that's scaring Recon Trust? Particularly since Recon Trust is a major national foreclosure trustee mill. Shutting down Recon Trust would be really something else. So help us out. Let's find out what's going on in Virginia. Specifically, it's hard to imagine that 275 of the properties suddenly went into short sale or got loan modifications and somehow got canceled off the site. To disappear off Recon Trust website, I believe they would have to be canceled. I'm not sure. So help us out. Let's see what we can find out about Virginia so that we can bring that back on Friday and let everybody know what's going on. And maybe it's something that we can duplicate in the state that you're in. Maybe we can get something that's what's happening over there to work over here in California. So as a nation, as a body of people, as the 99%, well, 99.999%, good talking to you, and we'll see you tomorrow.